Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. Today we're going to be talking about um, something you can do with Rivens. I came across a Riven when I was looking through, because personally nowadays, because there's no real content for me to do, what I've been doing is slowly working my way down builds um, and making a build for each weapon, so I've basically just been chewing through Forma. But when I was leveling and making builds for melees, I finally got to the Masseter, where it's not like an MR fodder, but I actually tried to make like a genuine build for it. And I realized that the Masseter is a 2 physical element weapon. So immediately I went and got a Riven for it. Reason being is one, they're dirt cheap. And two, the 2 physical elements that it deals are impact and slash. So here's its base stats: 135 impact weighting, 135 impact, 106 slash. Obviously gets quantized out. So what does this mean, and why am I making a video on it? Well, if you saw what was on the screen before, if you roll a Riven in these circumstances where a weapon has 2 physical elements, now there aren't many of them in the scheme of things, but the Masseter, and I think, oh geez, the Archititron is another one where it's 2 physical, and the God roll Riven for them is like a negative impact, so you deal slash only, right? Because this element doesn't matter, that's raw damage only, but if you're dealing damage with slash ticks, you don't care, right? So I rolled a Riven. Not great. I've only got 33 rolls in it, but I got the minus impact. It's got range and status chance, which the range is part of the God roll. The minus impact is part of the God roll. The status chance isn't bad. Like, I'll definitely take it. Like, if I had, like, range, crit damage, status chance, minus impact, I would never roll off that Riven, right? Though I'd probably want attack speed, say like range, attack speed, crit damage, minus impact for like a true God roll, right? But this is something I haven't seen when people are rolling Rivens. And the event that kind of triggered me on this and got me thinking about it a couple weeks ago, and I never made a video about it, was somebody in the Alliance rolled off of a minus puncture CCCD status chance minus puncture dark dagger Riven. So I figured I would make a video discussing God roll Rivens a little bit, because as of November 26th, Masseter Rivens are in the dumpster. I picked up this Riven a couple hours ago for, no joke, 10 plat. And I'll show you the performance. It is not 10p performance. And again, it's slash only. There are very few weapons in the scheme of things that are capable of doing this, because they have IPS. Like, even the Grand Prime doesn't deal slash only. The Galantine Prime, with its insane slash dispo, or its insane slash weighting, it's like what, like 90-95% or whatever, is still not slash only. Now, what's the benefit of this? Because obviously there's an argument for having a weapon that has a like the Galantine Prime, where it has a tiny bit of impact, tiny bit of puncture, so you RNG procs, and you just have a monster slash weighting. Obviously that works out, you get 2 free procs, but nowadays getting procs is not a big deal. So if you're running a primer, for example, Like, we'll take the Hystrix, right? What do we got? Corrosive Heat. Okay, solid. We'll do Poison Quill. So we got Corrosive, Toxin, Impact. So if you look at the weapon... Hold on. Maybe I can get an Impact. Okay, they're just gonna die. We've got Impact, Puncture, Slash, Toxin, Viral from the Panzer, Corrosive, right? So I don't need the Impact proc if I'm using a primer, and there's plenty of primers out there. Yeah, I don't need an Impact on the weapon. And the heavy attack, 992,000. So I don't need Impact on the weapon because primers exist, right? And you have a bunch of other stuff. You have teammates going around, like, they're dealing status effects. You don't need the Dispo waiting anymore. So any weapon, just so you know, if you have a weapon that has, like, Impact and something else, this method of removing a physical damage, has benefits with, obviously, the Masseter, right? The Archititron it has a high enough Dispo, and the Dispo that you're looking for to even think about doing this is there's a bunch of qualifications to even attempt this. First off, the Dispo needs to be 1.05, if you want to write that down, and it has to be a 3 positive. So it has to be a +3 -1. At no point in time, even with a 1.5 Dispo Riven, so 5 stars, but the highest Riven Dispo, you cannot completely delete a physical element. It has to be 3, and it has to be 1.05. So that's the barrier, but that's like the highest possible minus physical damage. Barely ekes over at 1.05, right? And we'll talk about something else, because the Dispo is different. You can do this with Tenet weapons also. But that's a little different. The Dispo for them, I don't know how much of you care. This is very endgame min-maxing stuff. But you need a Tenet or Kuva weapon with a Dispo of 1.35 to delete a physical damage type, if that is part of your build. So that would be something that would be valuable on, say, like a Tenet Grigori, or the Tenet Exec, right? Obviously, their Dispos aren't that high yet. But, like, keep in mind, if the people forget about the Tenet Exec, in like a year or two, the Dispo will be high enough that you can delete the impact damage off of it and literally just have a slash only. But you would have to be 1.35 in order to get a negative impact. So with the lowest possible roll of the progenitor element, so a 25% impact weighting, or a 25% impact progenitor on the Tenet Exec, you would need a 1.35 Dispo Riven that has 3 positives, and the negative has to be impact. So obviously, good luck, right? Like, I'm probably not going to roll off this Riven. I mean, I'm going to throw a couple more rolls on it. But the chance of me rolling off this Riven is very, very low, because I have 2 positives. I have 1 really good positive, the positive range. It literally saves me a mod spot, because the range on the Masseter is pretty good to begin with. So I'm almost getting primed reach. The follow through, I can't do anything about that. It's 0.6. Damage to infested, who cares, right? Status chance, I'm okay with status chance, because my entire damage pool comes from statuses. There's not any raw damage on this build. Even though it can, if I proc and prime, I can hit like 1 million, right? But if it was like crit chance or crit damage instead of status chance, so like range, crit damage, fire, attack speed minus impact would be like a god roll, right? But the important part is the negative impact. So enough of that rant. So there's a couple weapons that can do this, but I also wanted to talk about it in a more expanded way because there's a couple of weapons that are sort of the exception and have very niche uses. And if you heard me bring up the Rock to Dark Dagger, it kind of triggered me a little bit. Because the entire Dark line, including the Rakta ones, like the Syndicate ones, all fall into this. If you look at the damage that it deals, the weightings, it's puncture / radiation. And this is what triggered me a bit. Because I was doing a gas build for corrosive radiation heat. I was originally using this as a gas build with electricity for armor strip. But if I really wanted to go like hyper late game, I would need to take off puncture. And I wouldn't put another element on it. Reason being is, even though the crit chance is super low, the stance, Stinging Thorn, has tons of forced procs on it for slash. So it's a great stance. But the benefit is against Demolus. And this is where I wanted to talk about more broadly about Riven rolls, right? Because like a proper god roll is basically defined as a Riven that allows a weapon that is almost best in class, where you can use all 4 stats on a 3+ -1 Riven, where the negative is actually a positive. Those are the expensive chunky boys, right? The ones where they go for thousands. And it has to be a weapon where it accomplishes a specific task. So say things like Stropha Rivens, where it's like melee damage, crit chance, crit damage, like minus finisher would be worth a couple of plot. Vectus Rivens, even though they've fallen out of favor, if you get a multi-shot crit chance, crit damage, minus magazine, and more importantly, the minus magazine rounds you down to 1 round, that's a fantastic Riven. It's still worth thousands. Right now, I think I've seen people using the Nell a lot. So you would need a Nell Riven that's like CC, CD, fire rate. With like, maybe like plus recoil or something. Would be worth a chunk. I forget what the negative that's actually a positive for the Nell. Or like minus zoom, right? So if you have a Riven that has 3 positives that are really, really strong on it, and a negative that is actually a positive, that's where you start getting into god roll territory, where the Rivens get obscenely strong, and are worth a boatload, right? So the negatives matter. This is just sort of a Mimi corrosive build, and there's gas electric for running with the Argonac, right? But for this, somebody in the clan rolled off a minus puncture, and it has a high enough dispo on a 3+ to get rid of puncture. So this is a bit of a PSA. Let's talk about finding like things that are specific, because running disruptions is super popular. And I was going to talk about the Dark line, because all of these have this, where the crit chance on the dagger isn't good, the dark sword isn't good. You look at the dark split sword, it's better. But here's the thing, the dark split sword, there's a reason I have so much form in this. It's the heavy blade stance. The thing about the dark split sword is that it can be dual swords also. And look at this. This is way better stats. 25%. Hold on. 25%, 2.5 crit multiplier, 15% status chance. And the thing is the god roll for this, and this is what we were talking about today. For those of you in the Clan and Alliance, so just go along with the Riven Dispo issue. The true god roll for this is a minus puncture Riven, where the negative is actually a positive, because reason being is Demolus don't care about radiation procs. It's you'll keep the damage, right? But you'll never proc radiation on a Demolist. So it's like this stat doesn't exist. So if you Riven off the puncture, you're dealing only slash damage to a Demolist. And with 25% and even 15% status, including the stance, you're dealing enough slash damage. You can, and especially with the crit multiplier, 2.5 is a great crit multiplier. This can be a very strong candidate for a level cap Demolist killer on a budget. Because let me look up. Hold on, let me pull up. Let's see what these are going for. I looked them up yesterday when I was thinking about this. Dark Split Sword. Okay. Okay, so you have Dark Split Sword from Warframe Market. This is the god roll. Obviously, they're not going to pay 900,000 plat. It's a meme, but this is the god roll. Like, this is an appropriate. This is an appropriate Riven price, or this is an appropriate god roll, where it would be worth a couple thousand plat. Not this. This is sort of a meme. But if you do just basic filtering, like 35p, what you're looking for is a 3 positive. So cold heat would be blast. You could pull off, what would it be? You could pull off the heat to give you radiation and mod for it. Ooh, if that's actually the middle, though, you couldn't. So not that one. So you would need, not that one. Cold range. Yeah, this one. So 120p, 250p buyout. And it would give you a slash-only weapon against Demolus. Now, obviously, what I would recommend, honestly, is just find the cheapest one. Look, 1p, get something like this. Obviously, not that person. That person's not online. Okay, so this person. 10p, they're online in-game. You pick up this Riven, and you roll it, and on the first roll that you get, the minus impact, or the minus puncture, you essentially just leave it. It's a significantly different weapon. So, something like this, 10p, you can get the Riven going pretty quickly. Like the Masseter Riven, I did all of those rolls myself, and I bought the Riven for 10p. So 30, 40 rolls, it's not a big deal. It's less than 100. You can probably get a useful roll on it. The only qualifier is it has to be a 3+. The negative needs to be puncture, right? But you could take this weapon and almost immediately go level cap against Demolus with it and deal tons of slash damage against Demolus. So for something like this, just keep in mind when you're doing Rivens. Rivens are an incredibly complicated topic. You can break it down into a couple general rules of thumb, but when you're looking for like an actual god roll, like the true god roll requires you understand the weapon. Honestly. Like I've been using this Tonkor Riven. Crit damage, crit chance, status duration. Okay, so it's got a harmless negative, an okay 2, right? Crit damage, crit chance is solid, right? Status duration, take it or leave it. But the thing is I built the weapon for raw damage, and Hunter Munition doesn't rely on status chance. It's percent from crit chance. So the negative is completely harmless, and status duration, if they do stay alive that much longer, bumps me up to like, what, 10 seconds, 11 seconds? Hold on, I can do the math real quick. 6 plus 89%. 11.3. So I'd get 10 ticks of slash. Right? So it's not bad. But this Riven, you would look at it and go, crit chance, crit damage, that's good, but status chance, oh man. Well, it's a one-shot weapon. It doesn't even matter. The negative is harmless. Now, it's nice when you get, corrosive, right? But it's 17% as is. And I want the crit more. So it's an appropriate Riven for what I need it to do. And you're not going to say no to a quarter mil slash tick, right? Especially with like the faction mod and everything. So go to corrosive, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so talking about removing negatives to benefit weapons. There's a couple that are really, really good. And this is going to be kind of a list, right? All of the dark weapons, where literally dark is in their name, where they innately have radiation, are susceptible to this. Because they're all, the melees are puncture slash. So anytime you can roll that, a minus puncture, with the circumstance of doing Demolus, you essentially only have a slash weapon at that point. I would recommend rolling for the Dark Split Sword, because the twin sword stance, like when you look at it, you don't think anything of it, but the dual sword, not twin sword, has significantly better stance or base stats. 25% crit chance. Hold on. 25% crit chance, 2.5 crit multiplier, 15% status chance. You can do something about 15%, right? You can mess with that. And if you want, like, what is it? You could just throw like a Carnus Mandible on it. Okay, and for regular killing of enemies, and when it's not a Demolus, you're going to be dealing radiation and slash, and it'll be what? 60% weighted? Give or take? Hold on. %62% slash weighting, which isn't anything to sneeze at, against regular units. So even against regular units, you will be regularly proccing slash, provided you have Carnus Mandible on it. So it's not a huge mod difference, but you could just RNG it, because the base weighting is 28 to 32. You're going to be proccing slash anyway. So it's not a massive buff. Like, you would have to do like Buzzkill or something, and that'd get it up pretty high. Yeah, it'd be like 70%. So, food for thought. I know this is a little bit more than a rant than I like to do, but it was pretty aggravating seeing that person get rid of that Riven. So this is one of the ways that you can make a Riven work incredibly well for you. Is even if you have a Riven and like you enjoy the weapon, but it doesn't feel like it does damage, you can roll the Riven to attempt to delete a physical damage type on it and get a physical damage type that you want. So say like if you have something where it has like a even weighting between like impact, puncture, slash, right? And the dispo is 1. Make sure to check on the wiki, because you really, really need 1.05. You can roll off impact and then equip like Carnus Mandible. And this is super helpful, especially if you don't have faction mods. You're going to have an open mod spot anyway. And you could put Carnus Mandible on there and have a slash weapon at that point. So this is sort of a PSA. God rolls are incredibly niche and require you to understand each weapon individually. There are obviously general rules of thumb, like on melee, like attack speed, crit damage, range with like a harmless negative, right? But the true expensive God rolls is not a harmless negative, but a beneficial negative. Something that is innate to a specific task, and it allows the weapon to perform better than anything else. That's where you get those insane Rivens going for like 5, 10, 15,000 plat. So, food for thought. Gonna keep this kind of short. I know, only 25 minutes, while not a 50-minute video. But anyway, thank you for listening. This is just sort of a specific topic I wanted to cover. This is something you can do with Rivens. Don't forget it. You can roll off... Oh, one final example. Hold on. The dispo isn't high enough. And this is an example of almost a good Riven. It's a solid Riven. But the Fang is primarily a puncture weapon. I have 2 really good stats and the appropriate negative, right? But because it's not +3 -1, where the negative is puncture, this isn't a God roll. If I had range, crit chance, attack speed minus puncture, it would be a significantly better Riven, and not just because of the attack speed. Obviously, that's better. But when you have 3 positives, it increases the size, the intensity of the negative, and it would push this negative over 100%. And I would be left with a impact slash weapon, to which I could just mod Carnus Mandible and have a slash weapon. But to be honest, I kind of like the even dispo, 26.7, 28, 26.7, and the crit chance goes into reds. So it's whatever, right? But this is an example of like where a negative isn't strong enough for it to really be impactful. So this Riven would be worth like 200p. Like it's a decent Riven. It's not an insane Riven. Obviously, it's all the stats that you want, but it's not that Riven that's worth thousands of plat. If it was the same 2 pluses plus like an attack speed, or even like a crit damage, crit chance, or an attack speed crit damage with the same negative but with the boosted stat to it, it would be worth way more, to the point I probably would never sell it. Because if you do get a God roll, you're not showing anybody about it. You'll just run it and enjoy the power, right? So this is an example of where the +2 -1 doesn't get you to a God roll territory. You have to get the +3 on this. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to link in the info box of this the Semlar page, where you can look at the stat ranges, okay? This is super helpful. It's sort of like looking at this when I'm rolling Rivens. It's really, really important to know what my options are. Because reason being is, say with things like crit chance. Crit chance is more important for low base crit chance weapons that for whatever reason have high crit damage. Because the big multiplier to damage is when you get guaranteed yellow crits. That's where if you have a 9x crit multiplier, the big benefit comes in. Every crit tier after that is like a 41% increase or something like that. 40%, 41%. Because it's a ratio of tier 2 minus the tier before, then tier 3 minus tier 2. That's your damage increase. And it basically is the same damage increase each time you increase a crit tier. So once you get a yellow crit, a guaranteed yellow crit, after that, a primed faction mod beats getting to the next tier. In every case, going from yellows to oranges, oranges to reds. If you can go from guaranteed yellows to guaranteed oranges, exactly 100% crit chance to 200% crit chance, it's not even worth it, because the prime faction mod will give you more damage. So for this, on lower crit chance weapons, there are lower crit chance weapons where I have a monster crit chance roll on it because I'm using Blood Rush and the Riven to get me barely over yellows. So I'm getting like 101% crit chance. So for this gives you the stat ranges, and you can look up what your possible rolls are to know if it's even worth trying. So if I know that a crit chance range, so Dark Sword, okay, let's do something I didn't talk about yet. Dual Ichor, okay. The Dual Ichor has decent crit chance, and I think its status chance is like 15% or something like that. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Decent crit chance. Here we go. Decent crit chance, a monster crit multiplier, 3.0, and 15% status chance. This would let me know when I roll, I can then pre-do the math to know exactly what my numbers are. And it tells you what the effective bonus is going to be. So with Blood Rush, I would figure out what my Blood Rush bonus is and add these ranges to it to know if it's even worth rolling. Because if I can only get plus 53, that really depends on what Blood Rush is, right? What that pushes us up to, plus the base crit chance. And if I can hit permanent reds, that is a worthwhile bonus to me. But it also depends on where I end up before the Riven. Because if I'm at 250% crit chance, it's not even worth putting crit chance on the Riven if it gives me 53. Because it's only going to take me from getting always oranges with a 50% chance of an orange and a 50% chance of a red. It's not even worth putting crit chance on it. I would want to go crit damage, attack speed, and like range or something. So this will give you the ability. This is like trying to figure out how you're going to work on a car and not really knowing how to get to like a specific bolt. This is where you would look at your tool chest and see what you have available, and then you can figure it out from there. So I'll link this in the description. When I roll Rivens, I do this a lot. And also, pro tip, Windows has a snipping tool. I do this all the time when I'm rolling Rivens. You mod, right? And then screenshot the build. Hold on, not that. And then screenshot the build and stats. So you know where you're standing with your dispo and everything, and you can see what your weightings are. And you can figure out, because you obviously can't test a Riven roll when you're rolling it, right? So this is super helpful. Obviously, this is for people with multiple screens. This helps out a lot. And have Semlar up when you're rolling Rivens. I do that a lot too, to know if it's even worthwhile. So there you go. Pro tip on how to roll Rivens. Makes it a lot easier. I'm going to link Semlar down below. But make sure when you're rolling Rivens, a lot of times you'll find a lot of Rivens with absurd pricing on them are completely justified when you realize it deletes an element. Like say hold on. So say let me find a weapon. Okay, the Okina. I was looking at these. Here we go. Sky high disposition. Standard crit multiplier 2.0, 20% status chance, not a big deal. Hold on. I still got the old build. So an example, so you can sort of see what my thinking is. For this 16%, this would be worth a crit chance roll, or a crit chance plus, because it would get me from yellows to doing like yellows and oranges, right? Faction damage is the golden boy in terms of dot builds. But for a negative, I really, really, really want a puncture. Because even though it's not, I would be able to delete it, what I would be left with would be 7% impact and or 7%, a 70 weighting of impact with a 77 weight of impact with a 70 weighting of slash, which is enough to basically consider this a top tier slash weapon. Like, think about it. The golden boy god tier slash weapon is the Galantine Prime, and it has a 95% slash weighting. This would have a slash weighting of about actually, hold on, let me see what it is. So for this, if you delete, so it would be 77, hold on. So 70 divided by 77. So the Galantine Prime has a 95% slash weighting. The Nikana Prime, I think, is 90%. Or like 85. This would have a 91% slash weighting with a Riven, if you could roll off Puncture. And you would just do like crit chance, crit damage, attack speed. Or range. Actually, probably you could do minus Puncture below 0 to knock it out, so a lower number than negative 100. With range and like attack speed and crit damage. Or do crit chance and run glad mods, right? To get your like oranges. So even with something like this where it's not a true delete, Rivens are the only way that we have right now to adjust your IPS weighting in a more beneficial manner than just adding weight. Rivens actually allow you to subtract weighting. So for those of you rolling Rivens and doing like, I wouldn't say snipers. Generally, you're trying to one-bang something, so you want the raw damage. But for those of you rolling melee Rivens and say like secondaries, and you want a damage secondary. Oh, okay. So that reminds me of this. Hold on. Another weapon where this comes in is the Spectra. Okay. Radiation and slash. Because it's base damage, damage to Grineer, electricity, which is whatever, because I just want radiation. I modded for it appropriately, but it's minus Puncture, so it's enough to do something with it. So I could take this off and mod for something else here. So when I hit a Demolist, and I've tried this like up to the couple of thousands, like this does just fine. Obviously, kind of want better rolls at the top, but this weapon does just fine. And against Demolist, it only deals slash because the puncture's off of it, right? And the base damage and the faction damage to Grineer basically carries the weapon. But this would be another example of how to fine-tune a weapon if you have something weird, right? So if you have a weapon, the weapons that are really, really susceptible to this are weapons that have 2 physical damage types. And there aren't many of those. What you're going to see more often is it's going to have an element and then 2 physical types on it. There's more of those. So like the Masseter and like the Archititron are sort of outliers where it's slash and one other weapon or one other element. A lot of times you're going to see a single element and like impact, like you see that on like staves, right? So, and what is it? Impact and electricity on something like the Nikandi, but not the Nikandi Prime. The Nikandi Prime has IPS, right? And electricity. But the Nikandi... Oh, I don't know the regular one. Yeah, is electricity and impact only. So you could get rid of the impact and run like a dot build. The Nikandi has IPS and electricity, so obviously not ideal, but you could take off impact. Actually, what's the dispo on this? See, it says 3 dots, so I would have to look it up. But I just got a little crap +2 on here. But anyway, okay, this went way too long. But just realize this is a thing. You can remove elements with Rivens. You really need to know the dispo. If it's a 3 dot if it says 3 dot Riven on it for the dispo, you really have to know what that number is, because if it's 1.0, you can't do it at all. You can get like the highest or the lowest curse you can, and it wouldn't take you down to 0. It would get close, but a 1.5 at least allows you to start rolling off a physical type or a physical damage type altogether. So, food for thought. These exist, and this is like, say for this. Okay, final thing. So for this, like the god roll would be, like a minus impact, like range. You could do like range, attack speed, either crit chance or crit damage. It's got a decent crit chance multiple or crit chance, probably crit chance or crit damage. So range, attack speed, crit chance, crit damage, minus impact. To take this off, provided it's a 1.0 dispo, right? I'd have to look it up. Or a 1.05. And then you, against Demolus, you would literally have Puncture Slash to contend with. And it's going to be heavily weighted Slash to begin with. And with the Atlantis Vulcan, 18 times multi-hit, you're going to be proccing plenty of Slash. So, food for thought. This is something you can do with Rivens. I haven't seen too many people talk about it, but I guess ultimately this just comes down to me flexing a Riven, right? But no, it's just I realized I did this, and I haven't seen too many people talk about this, where you can actually take off a physical element to have it benefit the weapon. But I do this a lot. So I hope this helps you guys. Keep this in mind. This is something you can do if you have a troublesome element, or if you're like, man, I really enjoy this weapon. It's got like really weak impact, a decent weighting, a slash, and then it's got like a monster puncture on it. Well, see what the dispo is. If you can roll off the puncture, you can roll it off and have yourself a nice Grineer Slan weapon. So there you go. Have a blessed day, guys. Take it easy. Stay excellent and happy holidays.